Hey everyone, today we're going to do a little bibliomancy and see what spirit message we have through Levine's Dharma Punx. Alright, I do believe it's 240 pages, let me check. Yes, something like that. Alright, I'll grab 3 dice just in case. Alright, here we go. Alright, we have, make sure it doesn't fall. The table's a little uneven. We have 11. We have 7. And we have 3. And I am feeling 183. Yes. Alright. That may be a significant number. That breaks down to an 11 when you add all the numbers up. Is that right? I believe so. No, 3. That might be significant to someone. Alright, anyway, here we go. 183. Alright. Alright. The Thich Nhat, I can never pronounce his name. Sorry, buddy. Retreat was awesome, but huge. 1,300 people. My mind tended toward judging and resenting all of the rich, white Buddhists who were there with their brand new BMWs and designer clothes. Yet in my better moments, I realized that maybe there was some hope for our country if the ruling class was at least trying to wake up. I saw how clearly all my judgments were just creating more suffering for myself. I knew a few people at the retreat. Soren and some of the people from the Santa Cruz group were there. I ended up enjoying very much the teachings on mindfulness in every aspect of life. I realized, turning out, my father joked about how there was a time when they were thinking I was not going to make it, and Andrea tried to stick up for me by saying, "Of course, we always knew you would." When she walked away, Dad shook his head and mouthed, "No way." And Andrea, without turning around, said, "I heard that." Dad and I laughed, and Andrea kept walking. I felt so much love for them, and so much gratitude for their support and encouragement over the years. I thought back to that phone conversation with my dad when I was in juvenile hall almost 10 years earlier, and how that one simple meditation instruction, just watch the breath come and go. Every time your mind wanders off, gently bring it back to the breath, so drastically changed the course of my life. Andrea and I talked about the early days of our relationship, when I was stealing from them, and how she knew, but Dad didn't want to believe it. We had been all over this before, but it felt good to be accountable for my past actions. I felt so much gratitude for Andrea. Without her in my life, I might not have made it. I might have ended up in prison with Toby, or dead with so many of my other friends. After New Mexico, I headed for North Carolina to spend some time at the Human Kindness Foundation with Bo and Sita Lazoff. They have been inspirational teachers to me and are old friends of the family. They focus mostly on bringing spiritual practice into prisons, and it is my intention to eventually start doing some of that same work myself. On the way out, there I drove long hours, stopping to cook food at rest stops and use the facilities. The first night I made it just past Oklahoma City, and pulled off the road and slept in a field behind some office building. Lying on the earth, staring up at the sky, I felt a sense of freedom and a peace that I had never known before. I had let go of all responsibility of work and home, and was truly free to die or live or whatever. The stars above reminded me both how small I was and how interconnected to all things I had always been. The next day I made it to Memphis. I found a convenient campground and went into town to have a look around. I saw some of the Martin Luther King Jr. memorial stuff, and that was cool. And of course all of the Elvis stuff, which I was much less impressed with. There was a time years before when I had a poster of Elvis on my wall and thought he was the coolest ever. I didn't stay in Memphis long, Just walked around downtown for a little while. There was an outdoor music festival going on, so I checked that out for a while and had a conversation about the nature of existence with some drunk people I was sitting next to. The next day I drove to New Orleans, stopping in Jackson, Mississippi on the way, where I called my mom because that is where she was born. She wasn't home, but I left her a message of thanks and love for all that she had been through in her life and mine. Mom had really been through some difficult things in her life, but I knew she had done her best with all us kids, and we had all turned out all right. She had also turned her life around and was healthier and happier than ever. Taking the inheritance from her mother's death, she built her dream home in her old neighborhood on Pleasure Point in Santa Cruz. In New Orleans, I stayed at a youth hostel and hung out with some traveling English blokes. Also met some local punk kids when I was hanging out at the cemetery contemplating death. They showed me around and took me to some good vegetarian restaurants. I spent a lot of time thinking about my friend Aaron, who had really inspired me to go to Asia the first time. Having been many years clean and sober and world-traveled, he had moved to New Orleans to finish college at Tulane University. Aaron came home one day to find his best friend dead, having shot himself in the head with one of Aaron's guns. A week later, Aaron overdosed on heroin. He was found dead in his apartment. I reflected on our short relationship and how grateful I was that I had met him, and how sad it was that he had killed himself. It was a great teaching for me, as I looked at my own mortality and how precious human life really is. One night in New Orleans, I went out to a strip club with the English guys. I'd never been to one before, so I thought I'd better check it out before I died. It was funny that right away the dancer who started flirting with me had scars all up and down her arms and legs from where she had cut herself. I was more interested in what it was that made her do the cutting than seeing her naked. She wanted to give me a lap dance, but I just wanted to ask her about the scars in her life. I was thinking about Lola and about how she had done the same thing while she was drinking. This woman told me a similar story about how she would get drunk and cut herself, never when she was sober. She said that she had been sober for a few months now, and that those scars were a constant reminder of what happened when she drank. Her scars were almost decorative, straight lines up and down her arms and legs. They reminded me of the intentional scarification designs that I had seen in books. It was so clear at that point how I just attract and am attracted to women who are deeply wounded. She invited me to meet her after work at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I used my better judgment to go back to the hostel and get some sleep instead. The whole experience left me more understanding of myself and more compassion for Lola. We hadn't spoken since that night in the hospital. I prayed for her happiness and went to sleep. After a short stopover in Atlanta, I made it to North Carolina, to the Human Kindness Foundation ashram. My plan was to stay for a week and then fly from there down to Mexico. I had the plane ticket that my sister Tara had given me. Bo is an old friend of my father's and Ram Dass's. They had set up the prison ashram project together back in the 70s. Stephen and Ram Dass moved on to other work, but Bo has remained committed to serving the incarcerated communities. The ashram is set up around both personal spiritual practice in a community and being of service to prisoners around the world. We had a simple schedule of waking up early and doing some group meditation and chanting. Afterward, we had breakfast, worked in the office or garden, had lunch, did a little more work, and then had free time to practice or read whatever. In the evenings, we would often get together and play badminton or volleyball, then dinner, and after dinner we had silence until the morning practice period. One night in my room I was reading by candlelight, and I caught my reflection in the window I was sitting in front of, and was startled by my resemblance to my father. For a moment I thought I was looking at him instead of me. I realized how much I was becoming like him, physically and spiritually. Toby was doing some time in California Men's Colony in Southern California, so I spent my free time writing to him. I sent him Bo's book, We're All Doing Time, and included a long letter of forgiveness, love, and encouragement. A couple months later, after he received them, he wrote me and asked some questions about spiritual practice and said that he was enjoying the book and trying to meditate some, which is so very hard to do in prison. Side note, he was going to 12-step meetings in church every week in the penitentiary. He also asked for forgiveness for having ripped me off and told me that he really wanted my help staying clean and out of trouble when he got out. Reading that letter, I felt a mixture of sadness and hope. My heart was heavy with the weight of his suffering, but my mind was open to the potential of his awakening. Toward the end of my stay, I spent a couple of days in a small cottage off the woods alone and decided to fast during that time. The hours passed slowly and the hunger pains felt overwhelming at times. Practicing intervals of sitting and walking meditation during the day, at night I lay awake feeling like I was really dying. I was forced to let go, and all of the attachment I had around eating and being around people was right in my face. I was all alone, dying in each moment. Nothing to comfort me but my faith. With less than 9 months to live, I decided to hit the road and go hang out in Mexico for a couple of weeks. I wanted to relax and reflect on all that I had learned so far. I flew into Cancun and then took buses around southern Mexico, checking out the Mayan ruins and hanging out on the beaches or in the jungles. I often spent whole days wandering alone through the jungles and ruins of the ancient Mayans. There was some way in which their dead civilization was mirroring my own death, the passing away of all that I had once believed to be real and definitive. I'll leave it right there. I could keep going, but it would be too long. All right, guys, have a good one.